2014's first edition of Lightning Talks. Yay! Woo! Oh God, it's so bright right here. So for those of you who are not familiar with, I'm going ahead and starting my own 5-minute. For those of you who are not familiar with Lightning Talks, they're 5 minutes long. They're basically to steal from Ignite. I don't know if you guys heard of Ignite, but it's basically enlighten us and make it quick. So this year, we did things a little bit differently. I don't know if we're going to be able to get my slides up there, but hopefully soon. We did things a little bit differently. I had a co-organizer, Nilo. I don't know if she's here right now. If she is, she should raise her hand. No? Too bad. Maybe she's a university student, so she's probably hard studying. Great, I'm up there. So yeah, we pre-selected some lightning talks already. And so you're going to see half pre-selected talks and half not. What we wanted to do was to give an opportunity for those who are maybe too shy or just didn't want to give a full lightning talk or a full regular talk. And so maybe 5 minutes was just perfect. And as well as give them some time to prepare for those 5 minutes. So if you guys do want to sign up for Lightning Talks, don't fret, we still have a lot of room. I encourage you to come by the registration tomorrow and sign up on the little paper that we have. We'll have more Lightning Talks tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, and then Sunday morning and Sunday evening. So I wanted to steal a first few minutes to actually give my own lightning talk. And I sort of have a surprise, I guess, but it's kind of already been out of the bag for at least a day and a half. You might have seen Pip install pyladies already. We've gotten many questions on our flyers yesterday and today. Can I actually run this? Can I actually pip install pyladies and have a Python package? And yes, you can. So that's pretty awesome. So once you pip install pyladies, you run pyladies handbook, and you'll get a browser to pop up with our documentation. You'll get a full handbook and a checklist of how to start your own local chapter. You get a bunch of assets and images that are free for use to promote your own chapter, as well as a collection of workshop materials that you can reuse for your own events. And soon there'll be some admin scripts to help manage stuff. Like interacting with Twitter or Meetup API. So basically, I wanted everyone to be able to have your own pyladies. I've seen almost 200 downloads today on PyPI, and about 500 in the past week. And so I encourage you to go check it out and to contribute to our GitHub, pyladies handle on GitHub. And just so we're all on the same page, pyladies is an international mentorship group for women and friends in the Python community. We raised, as you heard this morning, we raised $40,000 for PyCon financial aid with a significant amount of generous individual donors who are actually here in this audience. So whoever donated, thank you very much. And I also, yes. I also highly encourage you to come tomorrow evening to the pyladies auction. We're auctioning off fantastic stuff from many sponsors, and it'll help us start financial aid for next year's PyCon. So lastly, on a similar note, apparently our t-shirts are very popular, are very hot. So if you did not get one, you can go to pyladies.spreadshirt.com and order your own. All right, thank you very much, and we're going to go ahead and start with the first real lightning talk with Matthew Frazier. Thank you.
So New York City, as the most famous and one of the most extensive subways in the modern world, there was this thing called the New York City Subway Challenge. The goal is to ride the entire New York City subway in one shot as fast as humanly possible. The current world record for doing this is 26 hours. Now, for those of you who know me, I am a gigantic transit nerd, and so I've always wanted to do this. But I also like sleep. So I did not want to do it on New York's, because it takes 26 hours. So I started thinking about some other subways I know. Atlanta's is one I'm very familiar with, but it's a very simple system, so it would be way too easy to solve the problem, and also there would be a lot of repetition, going back and forth through the same stations. DC's has a lot of the kind of internal connections we need to make it interesting, where we're going a lot of different places and making a lot of transfers to avoid repeating different segments of track. But it's pretty big, and also, like, if you've ever been to DC, all the stations look the same, so it would get really boring. Baltimore? Yeah. But fortunately for us, Montreal's is just right. We have lots of internal connectivity, but it's pretty small, so it's something you could do in an afternoon. And one really cool thing about Montreal's is all the stations are different, so there's lots of interesting things to see while you're riding. And so, since PyCon was in Montreal this year, I figured that I would ride the entire subway while I was here. And I wrote a Python program to help me do that. The URL will be up again at the end. But yeah, I did put it on GitHub because that's where everyone puts everything nowadays. No hate to Atlassian, but. So it just takes a text file which describes the Montreal Metro system like that. That's about half of it. It's just a list of what the stations are, what the lines are, and how long it takes to go between each station on each line. And it uses a great package called NetworkX to make a graph of it. This is just a very small section of the graph because Google Drive wouldn't let me upload the whole thing. It's huge. And you'll also notice it bears no geographical resemblance to the actual system. But that's OK. It's a graph. It doesn't need to, just as long as the numbers are all right. And just as an aside, collections.namedtuple is really great if you hadn't heard of it before now. And so is itertools. I don't have time to go into those, but they're great. Look them up in the standard library. So the thing about graph theory, there are lots of different algorithms that are very similar to the ones I want. And I talked to all sorts of grad students who said, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And I'm like, no, it's not quite the same. So eventually I ended up just brute forcing it. But I came up with a few optimizations. First off, never repeat an edge. If you have to repeat an edge, which means go on the same segment of track twice, then that's too much. Another important one, always try keeping going on the track you're on before you try transferring. Never transfer twice in a row. And use depth first search instead of breadth first to avoid allocating 3 gigs of memory and crashing your laptop. But the best optimization I found was keep track of the fastest path you've found so far, and if you can tell it that a path is going to take longer, stop. And as a result, it ended up running in just a mere 30 seconds on this crappy 7-year-old ThinkPad, which is plenty for anyone's use. And it gave me 8 different route options. This is just one of them. Don't try to read it. You can't. But download the program yourself and run it. And I had 8 different options that will get you through there in 168 minutes. And moral of the story, sometimes brute force is a good thing. So this Wednesday, my dad and I set out from Anguignon Station at one end of the Green Line. And 172 minutes later, we ended up at Honoré-Beaugrand Station, having visited every station on the entire metro. Yeah. Basically, it worked. But yeah, I was only 4 minutes off from the prediction, and most of that was because I was using the early morning and late night schedules instead of taking into account its rush hour, there's going to be delays. But we made all our transfers on time, which was surprising considering that one of the stations had a flutist, a person playing the flute on stilts, and that kind of distracted us. So as far as I can tell, this is the world record for the fastest time to ever traverse the Montreal Metro, but only because nobody else has tried it before. I would like to thank Anton Dubrau for giving me some information that helped me with planning, and I'd like to thank the Canada Border Services Agency for letting me into the country after I told them that this was what I was going to do.
All right, that's time. Thank you so much. All right, next up, actually, who here has been coding in 5th grade? Anyone? right, well, I see like no hands. I'm going to assume no hands. Here is a gal, Kayla Banks, who's going to prove to you that you are not smarter than a 5th grader.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla Banks. I'm 12 years old, and I'm proud to say that I'm a Python programmer. Now, before I start, you might be thinking, why should you be listening to a 12-year-old girl? Well, that's because I've been speaking for a long time, well, 1 year, to many professional computer conventions. Some of these conventions include UCNX, Women in Advanced Computing, Texas Linux Fest, Scale, which is Southern California Linux Expo, 11 and 12, and I was Young Entrepreneur of the Year at Los Angeles Urban League and was awarded several $100s for doing this. And next, I can add to my list is PyCon. And now I'll give you the background on what it's like being a 12-year-old tech girl. I started using computers when I was 3 years old, and this started when I was looking on the back of cereal boxes for links. And every day I would go to the computer and type in the link and try to see what game it would bring me to. And every time we got new cereal boxes, I keep doing this until I started becoming interactive at 5 years old. And that's when I Googled links instead of looking on the back of cereal boxes. And I got my first computer in January 2007, and that was my OpenSUSE computer. And also, question, has anybody ever had a blog when they were 5 years old? That's me. My most techy year was in 2012 when I was in 5th grade. That was when I was in control for the whole school's computer lab, and I was editor and writer of my 5th grade newspaper. And as you can see, I also made custom-made notebook covers in GIMP, and people would pay me like 50 cents to $1 to make them. Learning Python. I started learning Python in February 2013, and that's when I gave my first talk in Southern California Linux Expo. After I was done with Scale, which is the abbreviation for it, I was awarded a book called Python for Kids, which is an amazing book, helped me learn Python. And it was edited by No Starch Press author Bill Pollock. And in that picture, you can see me, my dad, and Bill Pollock. Also, I use exercises which help me get through Python and a website called Learn Python in 10 Minutes. My future projects are to program a nutrition facts program. And what I mean by that is, since I got Young Entrepreneur of the Year, I was figuring when I grow up, I wanted to make a Subway sandwich shop. And I was thinking like, well, what are the nutrition facts for a tomato or a pound of lettuce? And how much you would need to multiply it to get the nutrition facts of a Subway sandwich. And my dad and I came up with the idea that we could make a Python program for it. Also, I want to use more Python in the future. And also, I want to persuade WooZworld, which is my favorite game, woozworld.com. And I actually went there today because it's located in Montreal. And those are some pictures of me when I went to it today, 10 a.m. I also want to persuade WooZworld to use Python on their mobile app because since they use Flash right now, and a lot of people want to visit it on iPads and tablets, and there's no Flash on iPads and tablets, then they would open it to more players and business in general. And since I love WooZworld and I want them to keep growing, making the game better, that's why I want to persuade them to use Python in their mobile app and on their online site. That's the end. And thank you for listening to my very condensed version of my Free to Be a Kid talk. And remember, this is my condensed version, so I have a lot of other things that I didn't include into my talk. So if you would like to learn more, then you could write down these, and if you don't want to write down these, then you can come to me after I'm done with my talk for my business card. Some acknowledgments I'd like to make are the pyladies for funding my project, and PyCon for accepting me.
Thank you so much, Kayla. Hello, we have Gowrie Graywall setting up over here, and Chalmer Lowe is on deck. At the moment, we have someone who needs no introduction, Yarko, talking to us about scrape.
So I hope everybody's enjoying PyCon. I know I always do. Are you enjoying it? All right. I work at the University of Chicago in a research group, and unfortunately that means I do work for some medical doctors who sometimes want to scrape medical journals, and they don't always know how to describe what they want, and they don't always know what they want, so they change their minds often. So I got on this project, and it didn't take me long to figure out that I didn't want to be writing scraping tools for this guy forever, basically redoing them every week. So I decided I was going to give him, instead of a scrape program, an interactive tool that his grad students could use, and it's kind of a hack, but it's also kind of neat. I'm not going to show you the medical journals and the kind of stuff he wanted to do, but if we looked at session staff for PyCon, the kinds of things I'd want from session staff is to find out where I need more session staff. Like on this page, it looks like sessions 2 is missing somebody. So if I used some of the Python libraries, I could figure out what data I wanted off of this page, and I could write some scraping stuff, and then I could look at the source code and figure out if I got what I wanted, or I could also use LXML if I didn't want to use Scrappy, and I don't want that. These guys aren't programmers. I wanted something interactive, not just something that worked and would get me to write this over and over again and sink me back in the computer doing this forever. So what I wanted was something that looked like this. Give me a URL, bring it up interactively, let that doctor highlight what he wants, grab the selection, and show him or me what he selected and some HTML context around it, and give them a starting point to actually write selectors. This uses LXML, so it's sort of a simplified, dumbed-down interface to LXML. I don't need to use XPath seeing the context, so I can write some other things, and his grad students did pretty well with this too. Every time I select something, I grab what I think I want. I check that I've got the right number of nodes on session staff. We have 35 sessions, so this looks right so far. I try to zero in closer to the data I want, which is just the people's names on each staff. And I define an output table name. Those are the kind of variables in this thing. It's tables, and column names are the variables. And then I grab, with whatever the associated LXML command is, the content that I want, whether it's text or whether it's an attribute or whatever. And I wind up with something that looks like this, and I can save it in multiple ways, JSON or CSV or whatever. And I can also save the script that got ran and have them rerun it. This particular professor wanted to run across 4 different medical journals over 10 years of each of them. So this was pretty useful for him. Since I'm a programmer, I wanted everything to interact with the shell because I didn't know what he wanted to do. And so you can modify variables before you save them through shell commands, through anything on your computer. And there's a lot of commands that should look a lot like LXML. And that's pretty much it. If you want to look at it, it's kind of in alpha mode. It's a mess. It's a hack. And it's really nice to play with. You can understand code with it, too. So I hope you take a look. Scrape.readthedocs.org or github.com/YarkoScrape.
Thanks. Thanks, Yarko. That was awesome. All right. We have Chalmer setting up right now, and Henrik, you're on deck. And so now, Gowri Graywall, who, when I asked her if she's from San Francisco, she corrected me and said, no, South Bay. So she's going to talk about pair programming the hack-right way.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about pair programming and the Hackbright Academy. I'm an independent product management consultant, and my name is Gowri Graywall. So if you don't know a lot about the Hackbright Academy, here's some background. It's a startup that takes women from all different backgrounds and in only 10 weeks trains them to be full-stack Python web developers. In fact, Hackbright has placed more women in Silicon Valley software development roles this past year than either Stanford or UC Berkeley. That's pretty amazing. How do they do that? Thanks. So it turns out that pair programming is one of their secret weapons because it allows the students to stay focused, to learn by teaching, and to also take advantage of this driver-navigator dynamic in pair programming. So let's talk about focus first. When you log into your computer these days, think of how many distractions there are between Facebook, chat, GIFs, IM. At Hackbright, the setup is to have 2 engineers, 2 monitors, 2 keyboards, 2 mice, but only 1 computer. And by having your colleagues stare at the exact same screen as you all day long, it forces you to pay attention to the task at hand and makes you much less likely to be distracted. In fact, we have more productive 8-hour days than we would if we were programming individually. Second, there's this concept of learning by teaching. And they say that the best way to learn is actually to teach. What we found at Hackbright is that sometimes you get into a pairing situation and both students are at the same level with respect to the material for that day. And that's great because they both work their way through the material and teach each other as they go. But in many cases, you actually have different levels. For example, some of our students are former front-end designers, and so when we're working on the views part of the MVC model, frequently that front-end designer might be a little bit ahead of her colleague. What we found is that even if you know the material a little bit better than your pair, actually having to explain it so that somebody else can understand it really makes the material sink in and makes you learn it in a more thorough way. So we actually get benefits from pair programming even when the people within the pair are not at the same level. Finally, this driver-navigator dynamic is really important in pairing because what we don't want to have happen is to have a single person driving the whole time and the other person just sort of riding along on the coattails. So it's really imperative in pairing that you trade off being driver and navigator frequently so that both people actually learn all of the material. So you've heard how Hackbright Academy uses pairing. And what you may not know is it's not just for students and new hires. There's a lot of companies in industry that are using pair programming for even very experienced developers. So the logos on this screen are actually taken from job postings, recent job postings, for senior developer roles, where in the job description, pair programming was listed as a frequent job requirement. I actually interviewed the founder of Pivotal Labs, which is the company pictured at the top there, and asked why they do this, and it really boiled down to 3 things: communication skills, continuous learning, and culture. Pair programming, it turns out, selects for developers with excellent communication skills, whether you use it in the interview process or in the day-to-day job. There's this myth of the excellent programmer who kind of hides in a closet and churns out code but can't really communicate with her peers. And I would argue if that's the kind of developers that you have, you might not be hiring the right kind of people. So pair programming solves for this by selecting for great communication skills. Second is the concept of continuous learning. Most software developers today are constantly having to learn new technologies, new packages, and new things. And Pivotal actually found that their entire team can get up to speed faster on a new technology through pairing. Basically, just one person has to master a given skill, and then by pairing with different colleagues over a series of time, that skill gets passed through the organization exponentially. And lastly, they feel like sharing a task with a colleague for day after day is a great way to reinforce the culture both with new hires and to make sure the culture of your company stays intact as your company grows. So I hope that I've given you some things to think about with respect to pair programming and that you'll think about using it in your own environments. My name again is Honoré-Beaugrand, and here's how you can get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gowrie. Let's see, we have Hinek Slavik setting up over here. We have John Gill on deck. And now let's welcome Chalmer Lowe. He has had all of about an hour to prepare this as he had to fill in, so be kind.
Awesome. My colleague at Booz Allen Hamilton, Charles Givry, was supposed to be here. He was unable to attend. He sends his regrets. I'm his stand-in. As such, I offer you my apologies up front. He did not provide me with his slides, so we're going to see how this plays out. One of the things that Charles and I do is we work with a variety of folks to do data analysis. In a variety of aspects. They have some folks who might do data analysis in healthcare, in finance, in intelligence analysis, et cetera. Many of these folks have been in their field for years, sometimes decades. They're subject matter experts in what they do, but a lot of them did not have a good handle on how they can take their skills to the next level using things like automation through scripting, using cloud technologies, using data analytics, and data science types of skill sets. So Charles prepared a curriculum to help guide these folks through learning some of these skills. Not necessarily to make them into data scientists, but to give them some insight and give them some communication points so that they could do some of this work themselves in certain cases, and where they couldn't, they could reach out to experts in the firm who could do that type of work and then could rely upon those experts to take things to another level. The core concepts that Charles explored and that I supported him with were using a preliminary, like prerequisite type of courseware that we developed, just walking folks through the basics of Python. Let's get you started on Python. Let's help you understand scripting in general. Once we got folks through that preliminary prerequisite material, which was all basically online, they could do it in the comfort of their own home. We then brought them into a classroom environment to give them some hands-on experience with a mentor in the room to walk them through some more advanced concepts. The first place that we started in that material was walking folks through some data analysis skills using Python. We focused a lot on pandas, NumPy, and some of those other types of modules. We introduced them to some data analysis and data science types of algorithms, distance calculations, and things to get their minds to start to explore what you could do, a la recommendation engines or identifying similarities between disparate data sets. We walked them through a series of lessons on how do you collect information, whether it's through APIs, through scraping, what types of formats might your information come in, JSON, XML, how do you parse that, how do you read that? And then we walked them through a wide variety of ways of just slicing and dicing that data and playing with it. From there, we took them through an exploration of using a variety of databases, predominantly some relational databases, giving them an understanding of what you can do with those and how quickly you can get answers back from those databases. We then moved on and took them down a path to explore using cloud technologies, Hadoop, Hive, and Pig, help them to understand the benefits that they could get from using data sets that you couldn't open up with Excel and things like that. And then from there, we walked them through a variety of things, looking at how do you visualize the data now that you've found the answers you're looking for? How do you put it in a format that the folks who are going to be ingesting your results could understand? We relied upon some things from like Edward Tufte and his data visualization lessons. We also relied upon a number of things from O'Reilly. The format that we used to present this information to the staff was basically 30 days worth of material. But rather than trying to put a whole crew of folks through 30 full days of material, we broke it out into 2-hour sessions. That way folks could come kind of near the end of their day, not interrupt their real business, their real work for our customers. We broke it out to about 2 sessions a week. That way they could do the work. They could explore some of the materials, come back a couple days later, have questions. We could talk about it in the classroom, and then move on to the next subject. Some of the outcomes that we've had from this, we've seen significantly improved ability of the staff who were subject matter experts to really go one step further and wow the customer with the types of things that they were able to do. Saw some very good results with folks being re-energized in their work, re-energized in what they were able to accomplish. They felt bogged down by the limits that they had and how slowly they had to churn through things in some ways. So saw a lot of good benefits from that. We're still working through some of the kinks in terms of releasing this material out to the public. As soon as we have the appropriate corporate permissions to do all of those things, we'll have some more to come on that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk here on behalf of Charles. Sorry I was not here. If you guys have questions and want to talk a little bit about some of the things we did and some of the things we explored, you can reach out to us. There's our email address, Twitter handle, and I want to throw a pitch out there for the Python Education Summit. I was the co-chair with Naomi Cedar and Jessica Nickel. We explored with folks how you can educate folks on Python. Come see us next year.
Thank you. All right. John Gill setting up, and Bob Van Zant on deck. Just on deck, you can stay there. And if Jack Diedrich and Jenny Chang would just come up here just so we know that you're here. All right, so who here thinks logging is a bit of a pain? Yeah, okay. So here's Hinnick to help add structure to that pain.
Is this thing on? Awesome. Okay. Hi, I'm Hinnick, and I'm here to talk about log files and log entries. What is a log entry? I'm going to claim that a log entry is an event. And this is an event, but it doesn't seem very useful, does it? So it lacks context, because events happen in a context. So let's add context. This is not particularly useful either, although it has all the data we need. So there seems to be more to it. So what is a good log entry? Of course, a good log entry has to have all the data you need. But as you've just seen, it's not enough. It also has to be easily comprehensible. And by comprehensible, I don't necessarily mean comprehensible for humans, because the log entry was comprehensible to humans. Humans should not be the first-level consumers of log files in 2014. Computers should. And since computers love formal structure, how about this? This is just one line consisting of a TIE64 timestamp and a JSON dictionary of key-value pairs. Now, if you take this and give it to them, and after telling them that the first part is a timestamp and the rest is JSON, they give you this. A nice web interface with graphs and a powerful search. This is so much better than chaining grep commands on all your servers. So, but how do you get here? That's a problem. So, I'm going to skip all the wrong approaches and just reduce it to the two main problems. So, formatting. It should be ideally completely invisible to your app code. I don't want to fumble with format strings or JSON formatters. And I want a different format for development and for production. This is the easy part. Then there's the context. And you shouldn't have to think about passing all the key value pairs to all of your logging calls, because you will forget the most important one by Murphy's Law. So as soon as you learn about a value, you should add it somehow to the context and then just stop thinking about it. And fortunately for you, I have a solution that solves both. It's called struct log. And since I can't expect you to replace all of your existing logging infrastructure, struct log wraps what's already there, anything, really anything. Not anything, the standard library, anything. So the heart of struct log is a so-called bound logger, and they consist of the original logger and a context. Now, you build a context by incrementally binding key-value pairs to it. And now once you want to log out the event's key-value pairs get combined with the context to a so-called event dictionary. And this event dictionary gets passed into a chain of processors. A processor is just a callable that takes in an event dictionary and returns an event dictionary. So data in, data out. Totally simple, except the last processor has to adapt the event dictionary into something your original logger understands. So currently it's probably a string, but it doesn't have to. And until then, it's everything, just dictionaries and Python objects. So how does this look in practice? First you call getLogger, and then you start binding key value pairs to it. Simple. Each of these logging objects is a new object. So there is no global state by default, and everything is immutable. Ask any functional programmers of your choice. That's a great property to have. And this log object becomes your context carrier. So, and at no place you care about the format of your output. You just care about the data that's coming out at the end. So, ideally, you don't even format it into a string, but send out some binary data to some logging server and save you the round of formatting and parsing it again. So a more realistic example, this is a pyramid view, not a PyTest fixture. You bind the user agent and a peer IP to the logger. If foo is set, you set it too, and if something happens, log it out with yet another key value pair. The log output will contain all the values that accumulated along the way. So what witchcraft does that make work? Configuration. You configure once and then just call getLogger after that. I promise no global state, and you don't have to use it. You can get away without using configuration, but it's much more practical. So there's help for you to get to work with standard libraries logging and Twisted, and you can even save your context into thread locals, which you shouldn't do, but you can. This is an example for a processor. You get dictionary in, dictionary out. You can modify, add, delete, whatever you want. You can also just raise a drop event exception, and then it gets silently dropped. For example, if you want to keep out your monitoring out of your logs. So, running out of time. So, in a nutshell, struct logs works with any existing logger by wrapping it. You build your context incrementally, and it's all structured data like dics and classes until the very, very end. So, check us out on structlog.org and visit us on IRC on Freenode, and that's all.
Okay, thank you, Hinnik. Let's see, we have Bob Van Zandt setting up. We have Jock Diederich on deck. We have John Gill speaking to us about Python.net. This must be a mistake. Apparently, you can use Python to access .NET objects. Let's hear about that.
OK, so yeah, the title I gave it was Some Python Magic. Actually, I think all Python is magic, but this for me was just, I have no idea how it works, but it does, and that's good enough for me. So I'm afraid it's a bit interactive. Who here uses Python on Windows? Oh, few more than I thought. I feared it was going to be we were just both going to go for a beer and commiserate, but that's good. So you use Python on Windows, so I'm guessing you use IMPython. Who use IMPython? Oh, we can go for a beer and commiserate. So yeah, IMPython, great project. Not here to diss it. Fantastic project, great fun. Integrating Python in the .NET environment should be wonderful, but what about NumPy, SciPy? I know people have ported NumPy to IMPython, or there's alternatives and what have you, but then there's pandas and there's matplotlib. You name it, your favorite C extension, it's not there. So what do we really need? We need CPython, which can call .NET objects seamlessly, but surely that's impossible. Well, it turns out, I didn't know about this. To be fair, I have to confess, I've only been using Windows for just over 18 months. I managed to avoid it until then, and now everybody's moving off Windows. I'm moving from Linux to Windows. It's silly, and I don't know. I need therapy, I think. But so Python.NET, you can get it from GitHub now. I think it was originally developed by a guy called Brian Lloyd. If anybody knows better, and I'm giving the credits to the wrong people, I do apologize, because these people do need credit. It's fantastic stuff. David Anthoff has recently moved it to GitHub and actually got it so you can now even pip install Python.NET, and you do this pip install and magic happens. And after the magic's happened, well, here's the thing. What you have to do now for the little code demo, it's a really dull code demo. So you have to imagine that there's no, I'm sorry, John Lennon, I do apologize, but imagine there's no NumPy. It is easy if you try, honest. And imagine there's no batteries. All you've got is MS.NET. So someone wants you to generate some random numbers. So what do? Well, you do import CLR, and you do from system import random. And what have you got there? You've imported the .NET random class. So you instantiate an example of that, and at this point, this is too much .NET for me, so you use a little list comprehension called ran.next 1,000 times, plot a histogram, and boom, the .NET random class seems to be random. That's the magic. And you should have given me a round of applause at this point, all the guys, because I know this is thoroughly uninteresting if you're not confined in the Windows world, but suppose you have some .NET libraries that you need to use. I'm in the situation with a large code base developed in .NET, and it's the world's most horrible spaghetti code you could imagine. But there's some good useful objects in there that I like to do. Well, what I can do now is import CLR, add a reference to my assembly, and then I can import any object from that assembly and call it seamlessly from Python, and that's the magic. And another little trick I do, the .NET code I use uses the system diagnostics tray stuff for logging and that. If I want to write log messages from my Python, they come out in a different file and all over the place, and you can't get a coherent message in your log. Trace, so you just import trace into your Python code, trace.writeLine, and you've got one nice integrated log of what your application's doing. So I'd like to thank everybody who's made this possible. And since I'm on Windows, I have to give a special thanks to Christoph Golk. I probably butchered your name. Anyone who works on Windows, I think will know he creates binary packages for Windows, which I also think involves magic. And so I'd just like to say 1,000 times thank you to Christoph.
Thank you. Setting up is Jack over here, and on deck is Jenny. So we have Bob Van Zant talking about something I know nothing about, but very relevant, certificate-based SSH.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bob. I'm here to talk to you about certificate-based SSH. The idea here was that we want to provide controlled, audited access to servers. And certificates, I'm just going to read my slides to you guys, because that seems like a great idea. Certificates are not keys. So you've probably all used, I hope, public and private key pairs to authenticate with servers out on the internet. It's also possible to use certificates. Certificates are really cool. I'm going to tell you why. And believe it or not, this feature has been in OpenSSH for quite a while, although I just recently discovered it. And now the rest of you that didn't already know about it too. So a little bit of background on our environment. We're a big pile of mostly vanilla Ubuntu instances running in Amazon. And everything that we do, for the most part, is automated. But as you all probably know, when you've run these things before, every once in a while somebody says, but I really got to get on that box. I need to get that one thing we didn't write that tool for. And so we've got to find a way to get them on the machine. And where I work, security is paramount. So we really want to keep track of who has access to machines for how long, and what are they doing when they're on those machines. And so you've probably all done some of these things. At first, you're like, well, let's just generate an SSH key and we'll share it with everybody. And that is bad. It's bad. Similarly, you can just take everybody's public key and you throw it in the authorized keys file, and you let them log into those instances whenever they feel like it. And this is also bad. It doesn't meet any of those requirements I talked about earlier. And then we were like, OK, security officers. Let's nominate 3 people in the company. They're the security officers, and say, well, you guys hold the keys, and if somebody needs access to the box, you take their public key, you drop it in the authorized keys file, and now they have access. It's a little bit better than it was before, but typically what are humans good at? Forgetting things, going back and revoking access typically never happened. We just weren't that good at it. So, oh, geez, and one of these other things, that's the combination of these two common problems, these two first common problems, access to systems not being taken away, and not everybody keeps their private keys private, or they don't take it very seriously. You take these two things, you put them together, and this is just a terrifying world. The other thing that comes into play when you're auditing is everybody logs in as user Ubuntu. It shows up in the logs. Oh, hey, Ubuntu logged in. This isn't helpful. So certificates are awesome. What you do instead of launching with this gigantic authorized keys file, or instead of pasting in this shared public key, is you actually just paste in a different public key, but you prefix it with this @cert authority. Users that need access to these servers request a certificate. Somebody is able to generate a certificate, sign it with a certificate authority, In our case, this is the security officer using the open source tool that I'm pitching here, this SSHCA thing. The cool thing is that when you sign a key using this tool, it generates an audit log. It goes out to S3 and says, this is who did it. This is the security officer that was involved. This is who they generated it for. It says, hey, tell me, why are you doing this? You can enter in a bug number. You can enter in a support ticket number. And the cool thing about these certificates is they include restrictions. You generate the cert for a user. It's tied to their public key. It says your certificate is only valid for 2 hours. I think that's all it's going to take you to debug this problem, right? That's all it ever, 2 hours. That's like a long time. You probably don't even need that long. Also included in the certificate is the email address. You can type whatever you want. We use email addresses. And so when you log in, OpenSSH spits out, this is the email address of the user that logged in. So user Ubuntu, but it was actually bob@vesnat.com or something like that. And actually, that's the gist so these are what are called in OpenSSH, these are the user certificates. You assign these to users, it grants them access to these systems, and it's really cool. The certificates also work the other way around. I think we've all seen these before, and especially for those of you that are playing around in Amazon or maybe even using Amazon to support the company that you work for, how often do you just type yes? A couple of you are admitting it. I know that you've all done it at least once. And does everybody notice I did IPv6? Huh? Yeah? OK. You can also assign host keys. And what you can do is you can teach your client to trust the CA that was used to sign the host key. And now the same thing ends up happening in reverse. When you SSH to a machine, it no longer says, hey, are you sure this is who you think it is? You're able to trust, oh, it was signed by somebody. Whoever controlled that CA must have really known what they were doing and validated the fingerprint the first time. This must be OK. So where are we going with all of this in 22 seconds? I want to build 2 new things, and if you guys want to help out, you can find me. You all know how to do that. I'd love to work on it. I'm here through Monday. One is a secure self-service portal. I'm tired of signing certificates by hand. I wish that we could just build a secure way of doing this. And secondly, securely auto-signing host keys so that when machines come up in Amazon, they're able to sign themselves. Now, this is obviously hard to do correctly, but I think we can do it.
OK, so we have Eric Holscher on deck. We have Jenny Cheng setting up over here. And we have Jack Diederich talking to us about the physics of bowling.
So most of you know me from Python stuff, Python core committer, frequently speak at PyCons. Those of you who follow me on Twitter and haven't unfollowed me yet know that I also do a lot of bowling. I didn't start bowling even recreationally until I was 30. About 6 years ago, I was taking a couple years out of the coding game, and I thought it'd be fun to try to become a professional bowler. So I got a PBA coach. I was at the alleys every day, and I wasn't trying to make money at being a professional bowler, because you really can't. You need to be one of the 5 best in the world to make more than the average salary in this room. The guy who is #1 in the world is also champion at horseshoes. So to give you an idea of how accurate you have to be a world-class bowler, he has an 85% ringer average when he throws a horseshoe. So I was not trying to compete with those guys. But in a year, I bowled 3,000 games. I think at this point, I'm up to over 8,000 or 10,000. At some point, you stop counting. But anyway, I care about bowling a lot. So everybody knows you're trying to get the ball in the pocket. How the ball hooks is kind of a mystery. You want to get the ball right in between the head pin and the one just next to it so that it gets in there. And you want it to come in on an angle so it kind of rattles around as it goes through all the pins. Now, most people know bowling lanes look like this. There's pins at the end, there's the foul line, and then there's the space in between. If you've ever accidentally crossed the foul line, you know there's also oil on the lanes. You fall down, it hurts. What most people don't know is that the lane actually helps you with that hook. Now, you're not going to get a lot of hook using just an off-the-shelf lane ball. But if you have your own ball, this is demonstrating where the oil is. You'll notice the oil stops short of the pins. So if you have a nice, grippy $200 bowling ball, you're spinning it sideways the whole time, and it's spinning and spinning and spinning, and it's gliding on the oil, so it doesn't catch. So if you've ever wondered how they get that big hook right at the end, It's because for 40 feet, it's on glass, and then it hits sandpaper. So all the rotational momentum of the ball grips at once, and that's when it does the dramatic skid over into the pins. This is not actually correct. The oil really looks like this. So they have machines that lay down particular patterns of oil. It's heavier in the middle and in the front, and lighter on the edges. So the same thing with the ball spinning sideways and skidding. This way, if you throw it in the wet middle, it skids more. And if you throw it to the dry outside, it catches more. So it's basically a cheat. If you miss left, it'll go farther before it hooks. And if you miss right, it'll hook sooner and kind of auto-correct itself. So that's why you have the ball that goes almost straight and then dives at the end. Let's see. Gear is also very important. I won't bowl you for money if I don't have my own stuff. So I'm only going to shoot like 160 with a pair of lane shoes and a lane ball. One of the reasons is every bowling ball is custom. When you get it, there aren't holes in it. There's a guy with a very accurate drill press in your local bowling alley that will measure your hand and fit the ball exactly for it. If anyone does rock climbing, the idea is to hang the ball off your bones as opposed to trying to grip it. So if you have your own ball, you can get the heaviest one possible, and it feels like it weighs less than 10 pounds. The balls also don't have uniform weight. They have a uniform shape, but they're actually dense in the middle and have filler on the outside. So like an ice skater, with the arms out, it moves slower. With the arms in, it moves quicker. So when you put spin on the ball and the weight's in the middle, it will rotate faster. It has the same rotational energy, but it's spinning faster. The final thing about the ball is that since it is a custom ball and you are a practice bowler, you know you're going to release it the same way every time. So the weight inside doesn't have to be even. If you're a righty, it's actually heavier over here, so that as the ball goes down the lane, it also wants to fall over like that, which also contributes to the hook. And that's enough about bowling. If anyone's looking for a bowler who pythons, hit me up.
Thank you. It's a nice change of pace. Thank you. Eric, if you could set up. All right, so we have Jenny Chang, all the way from New York, who apparently was involved in pyladies of Boston, but has neglected to join pyladies of New York. So here she is talking about do-it-yourself stuffed animals, create sewing patterns with Blender, NumPy, and Pill.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm going to talk about procedurally creating sewing patterns with a little help of Blender and a lot of help from NumPy and PIL. So I'm not talking about any stuffed animals. I'm talking about stuffed animals of video game characters, like this head crab from Half-Life 2, or this little monster from Dota. And what you start out with is you start out with this 3D model. This 3D model is made up of a texture image and a set of 3D points and a set of 2D points. The 2D points are essentially the 3D model flattened, and it determines the projection of the texture onto the 3D. So you have your 2D image. How it's going to color the 3D object is determined by the 2D points. They're also called UVs. And what I ideally want to do is take the texture image, print it off as a piece of custom print fabric, sew it up, and get my stuffed animal. But there's some problem with it. As you probably can see, it's a little bit wonky looking. There's only one arm in the image. Your monster obviously has 2 arms, and the face is like sort of split and folded up. So first step is what I want to do eventually is to create a new texture image that I can print off. Step 1 is to create a new flattening with Blender. It's called UV Unwrap. It's pretty standard. So I take my, you can see the old smushed model, and then here's my new one that I made. And then, so how do I create my new image texture? I use Python. So because these are points, and there's like a one-to-one mapping of the faces from the old smushed model to the new smushed model, I can create transformation matrices between the two. So I use NumPy, I compute the transformation matrix, and I apply that to the appropriate section on the original image to get my final image. So I iterate through all the faces of my original model, transform them, grab the appropriate piece out of the original texture, and create my final texture out of it. And this final texture, I can print it off, and I can sew it up, and get my stuffed animal out. And if you want to make your own, you can find it on GitHub, or you can find it in the latest edition of Make Magazine.
That's really awesome. I've been using Python all wrong. This is what we should be doing. This is fantastic. Thank you. So now we have our last lightning speaker of the evening. We have Eric Holscher, who's going to be talking to us about an IRC channel, Positive Python. Or he's going to be speaking to us about Positive Python.
Can you hear me? Good. So it's an IRC channel and a hashtag, which is kind of one of those weird things that Twitter has ruined. So this is kind of one of my things about the programming community. As some of you may know, I kind of disappeared in the woods for a few months last year, trying to walk from Mexico to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail. And this is one of the most supportive communities I've ever been a part of, because it's a bunch of crazy people trying to walk across the country for no particular reason. And you're in the middle of the woods for like a week at a time. And so if there's anything that people need that you have, you will gladly give it to them. Or if they have it and you need it, it's just this amazing, amazing community, right? And then I ended up breaking my foot 800 miles in, having to come back, start programming again. And then I get introduced back into the programming community, right? And the programming community is not this welcoming and supportive, as you may have noticed. So this is one of the things that really kind of bothered me. It was really hard to kind of reintroduce myself into this community. The Python community I love. There's so many amazing and supportive people. The pyladies, all these outreach things are really starting to promote this kind of idea, right? And this is something that I want to kind of remind people that, like, be positive, be an optimist, don't be a negatron. And so I was like kind of drunk maybe like a month ago, and I was just like, I need to like make myself feel happy by thanking people. And so I was just like, I'm going to start thanking people on Twitter. And the favorite part about this is the first person I thanked was Diana Clark, who's the organizer of this very conference. And then I just started being like, who else do I need to thank? There's so many people in my life that I'm so appreciative from this community. And so I just started like doing it. And then the really cool thing happened is that other people started doing it, right? And this is where the community comes in. And I hope nobody gets seasick or whatever, because it's going to be going for a while. The Python community just kind of took this up and like took it on themselves on Twitter. Just go and say thank you, to anyone that they cared about and thanked in the Python community. And I haven't actually counted it, but it's somewhere around 1,000 tweets that just happened over this 24-hour period where there was just this groundswell of like positivity and amazing feeling and goodness on Twitter, which is normally filled with hate and awfulness and just awful, awful things. So I just want to kind of stand up here and remind people that, put something positive out into the world. Don't go on Twitter to bitch about things. Go on Twitter to thank people. Go on Twitter to say something amazing happened. And, do your part in making, the program community and the Python community a little more positive. So thank you.
And with that, thank you, Eric. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for enjoying these lightning talks. We have dinners, parties, events tonight. Choose your own adventure around Montreal. Enjoy yourself. Then bright and early tomorrow morning, there's the charity run walk. We're right back here at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow for more lightning talks, and we'll have a new round of sign-ups tomorrow morning as well as Sunday morning. So please sign up to give a talk. Thank you.